all Bonami's family. Great supportive community, close-knit caring family. We're non-judgy, blanket fuzzy, stigma-free. All Bonami's family, friends, family, and community. We all Bonami's family. Teaching, sharing is our key. Great big thanks to you all.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stigma Stompers, NAMI of Erie County, PA's one and only podcast. I am one of your hosts, Abby.
And I'm your other host, Janana.
Today we have a very special guest with us, Sam. We're going to be talking about what he calls soul-life balance, so reducing stigma in professional spaces, the traditional idea of work-life balance, and kind of transforming that into soul-life balance. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and thank you for joining us.
Janana and Abby, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation and see where it goes. One of the things that I've been super passionate about recently is prioritizing emotional health. You know, it's amazing that we have been destigmatizing mental health so much in recent years, but the true wave, and we can unpack this a little bit more later on, is emotional health, the mind-body connection. A little bit about me. I built my business up in Silicon Valley and was named to Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list, built a 7-figure business while working less than 4 hours a day. And I found myself just going through a numbing depression. And it was really discovering breath work, the nervous system, and how to rewire the mind and the mind-body connection that changed everything. And that was back in 2019. So I moved out of Silicon Valley. I became a yoga instructor, breathwork practitioner, master practitioner of NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, something else called the MER, mental emotional release, hypnotherapy. So I utilize all these different modalities, and I primarily speak on stages to teach this, but also work with clients one-on-one and have a free weekly breathwork session on Zoom to support people as well. So that's what I'm all about. Stoked to unpack this wherever you guys want to go.
Perfect. And I do have a question. So, we're building this business. Let's start off from there. And you still were feeling unhappy or sad and down, because I feel like a lot of times we have that misconception when we see someone who has a lot of money or they're doing well, maybe they have their own business. Sometimes we might think and say, wow, I wish that was me, when we really don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, 100%. I think of it as wearing a mask. We show up and it's that false or toxic positivity. Like, one of the worst piece of advice I've ever heard was never entertain a negative thought or emotion. And all that's doing is it's bypassing the feeling, it's compartmentalizing, which creates emotional baggage, and that gets stored in the nervous system. So there's something lingering on an unconscious level that we're not aware of. For me, back then, before doing the work that I do now, I didn't realize this at the time, but I really felt unworthy. And my bit of programming in my supercomputer, that is the unconscious mind, was when I achieve ABC, I will feel XYZ. So with every single accomplishment, yeah, I got that dopamine release and it felt great. But then a few days later, I was like, I don't feel any different. So I was like a hamster on a wheel, just chasing bigger and the next goal. And, the other piece of programming I was operating on, and a lot of people are in Western society, is going from doing, having to being. Now, the correct model, or more harmonious model for the nervous system and the mind, is going from being, doing, and having. And most of us, especially high performers, whether it be sports, entertainers, business people, whatever it is, right? We are so good at doing that when we finally get to this end stage of being, we're like, I don't even know who I am. And we're so uncomfortable. And then we get lost in our mind. We go, oh, mental health must be the answer. So that's just a little bit about kind of the backstory there.
Yeah. So what do you think the turning point was when you realized that you really needed to make this change?
Yeah, I was just spiraling out. This was February, March of 2019. And I had felt that experience of numbness before from other traumatic events. Let's just leave it at that without going in details, and knew that feeling. And a friend told me about something called a breathwork journey. And it was just a deep dive of working with a facilitator for about an hour and a half of deep breathing, just to say it simply. And I can unpack this, go as deep as you want with this, but for right now, I'll just say that I went to that experience not really knowing what I was going to get myself into, and I left that experience literally felt reborn. I, for the first time in my life, understood what it meant to feel light, and that was the changing point.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Kind of getting back to maybe the beginning of your journey, can you share a little bit more about your personal mental health journey and kind of what got you to start speaking so openly about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. Everything I've been talking about now, the breaking point was 2019. There had been an evolution over the couple years leading up to that. So let's call it like 2018 for sure, 2017, and yeah, I mean, I remember getting into transcendental meditation, TM, which is just you repeating a mantra for 20 minutes, that style of meditation, doing it twice a day. And I remember getting to my mindfulness. Mental health has always been important to me. Specifically in college, one of the things that happened was I was, and just a trigger warning for anyone listening, right? But I was in the living room when one of my friends had hung himself in his room, and we helped to, call the paramedics and deal with that situation. And even before that, just growing up in my life, I had always seen the world as gray and kind of half empty. So I think around the age of 18, I really started to prioritize like mental health and personal development, self-help books, and Tony Robbins, all the things. So yeah, in 2018, I was just taking it to the next level when I started to get into meditation, yoga, things like that, and that's where I was then. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's not easy, I'm sure.
Right.
So we appreciate you coming on, and especially as a man speaking your experiences, because a lot of times, males are told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, hold it together, be the rock, don't show your emotions. So what role do you think that vulnerability played in your healing process specifically?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it kind of goes to the other part that I didn't answer in the last one, Abby. So I'm glad you asked that, Janana. But yeah, when I started to really go deep on this path in 2019, after feeling reborn, being like I'm changing everything in my life, I started to speak more openly about healing online because I'd already had several podcasts and been like a content creator and wrote a few books in the years previous. But most of all that, like on social media, the content, let's just put it that way, was around business. And so to go from business to feelings and healing and things like that, that was a big shift for me in terms of being a man, and going to yoga classes and things like that, where I'm one of the only few guys in the room. I went to something called a full moon ceremony once, and I had no idea what it was. I just looked at the title and I read the description, and I was like, there's something in me that says I should go. And it was really deep and transformational. Of course, I was one of the only men there. And this is going to sound silly to some people, but this was back in May of 2019. One of the main messages that came through was to leave my fantasy football league. And when I say that, I'll also say like my fantasy, at the time I was 31 years old. So I was about, 9 years, almost 9 or 10 years out of college. And those were with my best friends from college. So it's how we, stay in touch. And a lot of them were meatheads, right? And I mean that with all love. And our league was very competitive. We would talk on our our WhatsApp channel or just text message channel every single day, even when it was off season, there was no football. So when I made that really tough decision to leave the league, like, you can imagine all the things that my quote unquote friends would say to me that were toxic. It's all being kind of more meatheads. And I didn't talk to pretty much any of those guys for like 2 years. And there was a quote that really helped me, and it's by James Whitaker, and it came around into my consciousness around that time. And it's hang out with people with a common future, not a common past, which is about honoring all the people in your network, in your life, in your relationships. It's not about discounting those relationships, but it's not clinging on to relationships that are no longer serving you. So from there, a few years later, most of this started in 2019. In 2022, I started teaching yoga, and I started leading a men's group. Like, that was a massive shift in my identity. And that bridge in those 3 years between 2019 and 2022, funny enough, I would call myself a recovering bro, because I needed that, like, kind of like, hey, I was cool. I still am cool. I'm not just like this flowery guy. So that was really good for me as I reflect backwards, because it helped me to kind of bridge the gap between like who I was before and who it was that I was becoming.
Wow.
I love that. Yeah.
I love that a lot. I feel like that's so important for all men, but I feel like especially like young men who are maybe in like a bro phase, like whether they're in college or like high school, it can be so toxic. So I feel like it's really cool hearing that you're so vulnerable with your healing process, and you're so okay and proud of who you are with or without like the football or the bro friends that you had. So I really love that.
Add one thing, Abby, there?
Yeah.
So this is kind of fun. Just 2 days ago, as of the recording of this podcast, I saw one of my best friends at the time that was in that fantasy football league, who now I rarely ever talk to him. Like, we're cool again, but we're just on different tracks. I saw him post on Facebook 2 days ago that he's started a journaling practice every single morning, and how much it's so important. And in that post, he was being vulnerable, emotional, and talking about, like, and I was like, holy cow, wow. Like, so things come around too, like people change, and as we change, others change around us as well. So it's really cool to bridge that gap between what I just shared and kind of like where a lot of those, not a lot, but where some of those guys are now,
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I feel like taking that first step and kind of seeing like another part of life, like how you got interested in yoga, doing that and being open about it, I feel like allows other people to also try new things that they never thought they would, and they ended up loving. So he tried journaling and loved it. That's fantastic. And it probably helps him in so many ways. So I feel like, and then him posting about it, I feel like is even better. That's such a good use of social media. I feel like social media has so many terrible things, but then things like that is what reminds me, like, oh, it's actually such a good way to share with other people. So I really love that.
Awesome.
So you have a kind of term for work-life balance. You call it soul life balance. Can you kind of explain that and how it came to be?
Yeah, 100%. That was a message that came through in 2019 when I was going deep in this inner work, and I didn't really fully understand what it meant. It took me about 3 years to figure out what it meant and how to best embody it. And the best way I can teach it now is by teaching the archetypal energies of the yin and yang, or yang. I mean, I'm always wearing a yin and yang shirt, or, have them all around. But the point is, most of us have seen this symbol of the yin yang or yang, but we don't know exactly what it means. And the light side, or the white side of the yin yang, that actually represents the yang energy, the yang. And that is the outer world. how we experience the world with our five senses. It's the fact that most of us move through the world as a human doing as opposed to a human being. Now we need both, and that's why there's the little dot of the yin energy in there as well. When we look at the symbol and we see the dark side, that's the yin. The yin represents the internal world of our mental, emotional state, and something greater than this human experience. We could also equate it to connecting with our unconscious mind and our intuition. So now, with that in mind, the inner world and the outer world, what the difference is, we apply that to the term work-life balance, and we can so clearly see that both work and life are the outer world of doing as opposed to being. That's all it is. Yin is being, yang is doing. Work, that's very much doing. I don't need to say anything more than that. Life, yeah, there's those times when we might start to slow down and check in, but when we're not working, what else are we doing? Taking care of our pets, our loved ones, our kids, our parents, or our bills, going to the gym, trying to stay healthy. We're still doing. Most of us don't take time to slow down. Now, what's fascinating is we see work-life balance as like kind of this, we need more work-life balance, and that's going to help us with our mental health. But the truth is, on an unconscious level, we're prioritizing work over life because we're saying work before life. If we actually cared about people's mental health, we would call it life-work balance. So we're unconsciously prioritizing our life before work. And then couple that with understanding both of those are about the doing, then still that isn't a solution. Soul life balance is a reframe where we recategorize work as a part of life. We don't give work so much weight because work-life balance is propaganda for corporate and for business culture to be like, hey, you got work and you have a life. Truth is, work is just part of our life. And we're recategorizing this and reprioritizing, I should say, to put the soul before work. And the soul consists of the inner world. So all this is soul life balance. The soul side is that yin energy of our internal world, of our intuition, our mental, emotional health, our connection to something greater than this human experience, the fact that we are human beings. And then the life side of soul life balance represents the outer world of human doing, of we actually have to still do the thing, because people can get lost in one of two categories. They go too far on the doing side or they go too far on the being side. And that's why we need to balance both. And, people get thrown off by the term balance, but what is the balance board? When you're balancing on a board or say surfing or on a paddle board, skateboarding, whatever it is, you're never 50-50. Right? You're balancing, you're going back and forth between the two, but you're still riding and you're upright. You're not falling down. That's why we use the term balance. And I hear from a lot of people, they don't like the term balance because in their mind, they equate it to 50-50. Right? But that's not what balance means. Balance is understanding sometimes you might be more on the life side, other times you might be a little bit more on the yin side. Either way, though, you're prioritizing both because we need both.
I love that. I absolutely love that. We can easily get swept away in work and forget about that other side and the internal. So I love that you talked about that.
Yeah, definitely.
So for our listeners, what are some practical ways that they can begin to incorporate that soul life balance into their own routines?
Yeah, so let's talk about mental and emotional health. So as all agree here, we all love mental health, but that's not the full picture, because what's happening is anytime we have a thought, that sends a signal to our body and that creates a feeling. And because of most of us don't feel comfortable to process negative feelings, whatever that might be, on an unconscious level, we avoid, we distract, we numb ourselves from feeling that feeling, which gets stuck and stored in the body. Neuroscience teaches us that there's something called the 90-second rule, where we can process these uncomfortable feelings in as little as 90 seconds. So it looks like this. Thoughts are the language of the mind. Anytime we have an unwanted or uncomfortable thought, When that sends a signal to the body, that's creating the feeling. When we allow ourselves to feel that feeling, then that energy gets moved through us. And that is why we need to process or prioritize both mental and emotional health. Mental health equates to the mind, which is the language of thoughts. Emotional health equates to the language of the body, which are feelings. So what we can do in these 90 seconds to actually move through those uncomfortable feelings to get more clear-headed is something I call the breath method. I wrote about in my recent book, Overcome the Overwhelm, and there are 6 steps. The word breath is an acronym. Usually I just teach the 3 themes because it's easier for people to remember. And the 3 themes are breathe, feel, think intentionally. So it looks like this. You have that thought, that's an unwanted thought that sends a signal to the body. And now all of a sudden you're feeling like the adrenaline rush, the cortisol release. You're feeling like you're moving into survival mode. As soon as you have that awareness, celebrate the fact that you just built moment to moment awareness and take a pause and just breathe. Just connect with your breath with long, deep, slow inhales and exhales. Next, we step into the theme of feel, and we can easily just say the word relax in our mind, like relax. And as we say the word relax, that's sending a signal to our nervous system to slow down and relax into what's coming up into the surface. Now, I teach this even deeper, and I teach a few other things as well in that phase, but we'll just keep it there for now. That's called shadow work. Which just means bringing the unconscious to conscious awareness. So understanding what the programming is running so that we can allow ourselves to feel safe enough to allow that energy to move through us. Finally, now we've earned the right to invoke the power of positive thinking, and now this final stage is thinking intentionally. And this would be like a positive affirmation, like an I am statement, like one thing that you know to be true of yourself, and just ask, okay, as a result of what came up in this 2 minutes of slowing down and being with what came up, what actions, habits, or behaviors can I take? So something that a lot of my clients and a lot of people are doing as it relates to practicing their mental and emotional health is just remembering the 90-second rule. You can move through uncomfortable feelings in as little as 90 seconds. And what you do in those 90 seconds are the 3 themes of breathe, feel, and think intentionally.
I feel like that's so interesting. And so I feel like a lot of the times we do that without even thinking about it. Like if I'm having like a moment where I'm freaking out or something, I literally take a breath, tell myself to relax and try and get into a better mindset. And I do that without even having to really force myself to do it or think about it. So I like that you kind of just took something that some people might do, others may not, and just, I don't know, like brought it to the surface and are like, you can do this. It's simple, but also I feel like it's complex. I just like the idea of it.
Yeah, totally. And you're totally right, Abby. It's one of those things where when we are doing the work, it starts to become unconscious behavior. And that's why it's coming up for you where it's like, oh yeah, that's what I already do. And when we put a name and a process to something, now consciously we understand it so we can even do more of it and go even deeper. And to your other point, like for those of us that are newer on the path of like doing the work and sitting with what's coming up, it gives them a blueprint.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mhm.
I love that. Continuing kind of down the path of work life and kind of professional spaces, why do you think there's still a stigma around talking about like feelings and emotions and mental health or things like burnout, anxiety, depression, especially in those professional spaces?
Well, it's so funny because anytime when we make a decision to do something, we do it based off of how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I love catching this in pop culture, like an interview or a movie or a show or in conversations with people that I know that are less comfortable talking about their feelings. They'll let it slip, right? Like I feel like this or whatever it is. But when it comes to like going deeper, yeah, all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, right? And this is vulnerability and transparency. And it's uncomfortable to feel those negative emotions. We want to feel good instead of feeling what's coming up to the surface when we're in a corporate setting or a business setting. We've been conditioned and programmed to be like, that's not acceptable, right? We need to put on this mask of positivity and whatever it may be. So we start to shove down those feelings, we compartmentalize, and we just show up as our best self, because a lot of times it comes from like inner child type stuff where we just want to do our best and be told that we're doing a good job and not rock the boat, so we're afraid of actually being seen, and we put up these energetic walls that go along with that, the mask that we're wearing.
I feel like also a lot of the time, most people's bigger emotions like anxiety most, not all, stem mostly from their job. So having your job induce all the bigger emotions, but then not being able to talk about those emotions at the workplace when everyone else is also feeling the same way, it doesn't make sense. So normalizing those conversations in professional spaces with coworkers who are going through the exact same thing. If you're all working on the same project or trying to do a budget for anything, you're all going through the same thing and probably feeling the same emotions. So we should normalize that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up anxiety, because I love talking about anxiety, because people are way more comfortable talking about anxiety as opposed to like sadness or even stress. Like people don't want to admit stress, but like anxiety, for whatever reason, more people are more like, okay, I can say, yeah, I have anxiety. And anxiety is really simple. And I'm not talking about panic attacks. I'm just talking about normal day-to-day anxiety. All it is worrying about the future. That's all it is. And the 90-second rule, that this is a fearful thought, worrying about the future, which we're actually in the present, we're not there now. And that's creating a feeling, which is a shortness of breath, which is contributing us to getting into that survival response. We can apply the breath method or the 3 themes of breathe, feel, think intentionally. I also guide my clients through an anxiety model through neuro-linguistic programming and MER, mental emotional release. And it's simple. It just takes a few minutes. It's a short visualization where you just drop into that specific thing in which you thought you were feeling anxiety about, and you visualize the successful completion of it through your own eyes. So you're associating it. And when you're looking through your own eyes with your eyes closed, imagining the successful completion of that thing which you previously thought you had anxiety about, now that's creating feelings of confidence in your body. Then you come back into the present and you land with those feelings in your body now, and you visualize it moving forward. And every single time I lead a client through this process, they no longer feel the anxiety, and now they have a tool where they can use that anytime they feel anxiety. But the key is you have to label a specific event. If you were not labeling a specific event in terms of what is giving us anxiety, it's not going to work.
Wow. That's really the only word I have for that. Wow. It's just really cool. It's a really cool concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining all that. That's a lot to take in. And I feel like you do a good job really detailing everything and explaining it so everyone understands. My next question is very similar to Abby's, but it's, why do you think there's still stigma around for males talking about their emotions and what they're going through specifically? And then on top of that, how do you think you sharing your story has helped break down that stigma?
Have you guys heard of the Pygmalion effect or the Pygmalion theory?
No.
There was a study, I want to say it was from like 1968, but it was probably like sometime in the 1960s. But essentially, a professor or a teacher was told certain students were gifted and in a class, but they weren't. And they studied this and they started to treat those students differently. And because of mirror neurons, which are basically like how we pick up our neural pathways and we're connected with one another, those students started to feel more confident. Not only were the teachers giving them more attention, but the students were picking up on that confidence. They tracked their success, and all of a sudden, they started to be much more successful than they were previously. So the Pygmalion theory teaches that how we feel about someone is going to impact how they actually are. So a real life example is like, I have a friend where she's working with her partner, and she just is always like, he's not going to do this, he's not going to want to do that, or whatever it is. We all know those situations. We all have those situations where, whether it's a friend, it's a parent, a relationship, where we're like, that person just, they're not going to. We're putting a limitation on that person. If we flip the script and all of a sudden now we see what's possible for them, because we're doing the work on ourselves and we're seeing the glass as half full rather than half empty, and we're applying to how we see ourselves to how we see that other person, that impacts them. And that's the Pygmalion theory. That's the science behind it. So as if we're going to look out at the landscape and say, oh, men are struggling to speak up or be vulnerable or be more transparent, that's going to be mirrored back to us, because that is the expectation that we're seeing, and our brain filters for that. In any given moment, I'm just rambling now, or riffing. In any given moment, we're processing over 11 million bits of information, and we're only consciously aware of 50, not 50,000, just 50. So let me say that again in another way. In every single second, we're processing 11 million bits of information, and our unconscious mind's job is to filter that down to 50 bits of information so we can make sense of it. And what's happening is there's a filtration system of deletion, distortion, and generalization. So out of those 11 million bits, we're deleting the information that doesn't align with our beliefs, our values, and our programming. We're distorting the information so it makes sense and we can understand it on a conscious awareness. Then we're generalizing information, be like, oh yeah, I know what that thing is, and I'm associating it with this thing. So when we begin to reprogram our subconscious or our unconscious mind, now we can start to see different things than that we previously did not see. And there's a tiny little piece in the brain. Have you heard of the reticular activating system?
I
No.
think so.
Yeah, so it's called the reticular activating system. It's about the size of your pinky fingernail, super small. But basically what that does is it's a matchmaking system. So whatever our unconscious beliefs are, the reticular activating system has us see more of it. So think about how, like, you might have bought a car, or something came to your awareness, and then you start to see more of it. And from a spiritual perspective, people are like, oh my God, it's a sign, right? But from like a grounded science, neuroscience perspective, it's the RAS, it's the reticular activating system that's filtering out everything else so you can see that other thing. So to bring this full circle, if our beliefs are that, oh, it's a challenge for men to speak up and be more vulnerable, then that's going to get mirrored back to us. But when we reprogram the unconscious mind to be like, wow, oh my God, like so many people are being more outspoken about their mental health. Even the rapper Logic, he's got a song called Anxiety. How amazing is that there's a rapper openly talking about like his struggles with mental health and anxiety. And we start to see those other things. Now we're reprogramming our mind to see it differently. And this can be applied to anything in our life. But I'm just using this as an example to address your question on how we can start to see things differently.
That's amazing. I never thought of it that way, quite honestly. So, I mean, I guess now that you think about it, it is true. You hear that, think positively and positive things will happen. And now diving deeper into the logic behind it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and also we need to do our shadow work to process the negative stuff, because otherwise that's getting encoded in the unconscious mind. So we sit here and we're like, I'm doing my positive affirmations. I'm thinking positive. I'm doing all the things they say to say, why isn't this working for me? The chances are you're probably not actually processing those more challenging thoughts and feelings, or aka our shadow work, and you're compartmentalizing, and that creates emotional baggage. And emotional baggage is that feeling of heaviness. It's like wearing a backpack that's 50 pounds and you've been walking around with that backpack. And then when you finally have an experience of releasing that energy that's not your burden to carry, you're like, oh my God, there's a monkey off my back. I'm no longer carrying all that weight, because compartmentalization is emotional baggage.
Wow.
There's definitely a lot of people who are still feeling a lot of shame about either struggling with their mental health or just the idea of mental health in general. Whether it's anxiety or stress or whatever. What would you say to those people who are feeling that kind of shame or embarrassment?
I love speaking about shame, because that's one of my core pieces of programming. Like I have so deeply still am working through shame, unworthiness, guilt, all those sorts of things. And when I finally get to a point of feeling like I've really addressed that and made a big difference in my life, and it's not coming up anymore, I'm going to write a book about it. And that title is, as of now, Mastering Worthiness. So I say that to say, like, I think with any quote unquote expert, we need to really vet who we're listening to, because a lot of times people are still just putting on masks like they got everything figured out. And I feel like when we act like we got everything figured out, at least for me, when I hear and see someone like that, I'm like, I'm going the other way, because I was wearing a mask before, and that doesn't feel in alignment. So what I do when shame comes up, and helps a lot of my clients, and it helps me a ton too, which is why I teach it, is I celebrate it. Most of what we're trying to do is be present, right? Those sad feelings are stuck in the past, and those anxiety feelings are stuck in the future. And when we're currently notice that, oh my God, I'm shaming myself right now, instead of going further down that rabbit hole, I've reframed that to be like, oh my God, I just built moment to moment awareness. I'm going to celebrate that, because now I can choose to respond as opposed to unconsciously react. In my TED talk, and sometimes on stage, I'll share this example, but like, I love pistachios, and I'm no longer doing this, which is awesome. But a couple of years ago, even probably just last year, I would find myself hovering over the trash can eating pistachios. Now I have like this what is it called, shelf, I don't know. Anyways, there's a counter, it's a counter, and underneath it, like the trash can receptacle comes out, so I put the pistachios on the counter, and it's a big bag of pistachios, and I just toss a ton in my palm, and then I get lost in this rhythm of like cracking the shell, tossing the pistachio in my mouth, and then tossing the shell in the trash. So it's like crack, toss, chew, crack, toss, chew. And I'm like, just one more handful. I'm telling myself I'm mindfully eating, because I'm earning the pistachio, because I have to crack it, right? That's what I'm telling myself. And then all of a sudden I'm like 4 more handfuls deep, and I think to myself, what am I doing? And we all do this, whether it's binge emotional eating, binge watching TV, doom scrolling, whatever the thing is, we have our quote unquote coping mechanisms, right? Or our behaviors that are unconsciously avoiding, distracting, and feeding into that. And when we get to that moment, because we all get to that moment of what am I doing? That energy right there is unconscious shame. When I get to the point of, oh my God, I'm binging again. Why am I doing this? What am I doing? All of a sudden I notice in my body, I'm feeling shame. And then that's when we can reframe it. Oh my God, I just built moment to moment awareness. Instead of feeling shameful around this, I'm going to celebrate the fact that I just built moment to moment awareness. And now I can enter in the 90-second rule with breathing, feeling, and thinking intentionally, so that I can address that shame in real time and process it. Now, I no longer feel like totally unworthy or a ton of shame and guilt and things like that, but it still comes up. So when it does come up, that's the process I use.
Wow.
Again, I feel like that's something that so many people catch themselves doing, but rather than take the shame and try and create something, I don't know the right word, not productive from it. I don't know a better word. To try and create something positive, there we go, from the shame that they're feeling, they kind of get stuck in it. And I feel like that's when a lot of other emotions or mental health challenges come, is just perpetual shame.
Mhm.
So I really like the idea of celebrating the fact that you were able to feel it and create something else from it. I really like that.
Mhm. So now we'll jump into some tools and practices that you have. So what are some practices that you have seen to be most helpful for you in maintaining your own mental health?
Every single day when I wake up in the morning, I do breath work. There's days that I miss it, but for the most part, almost every single day, even if it's 2 minutes, most of the time it's like a 5 or 10 minute practice. I do it in bed before I wake up. And there's so much to breath work. What I'll share with the two of you right now and everyone listening is the cyclic sigh. Stanford did a study a few years ago to discover what was going to be the most impactful, either breath work exercise or meditation to alleviate stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, not only in the moment, but to have lasting impact throughout the day. And what they found is the cyclic sigh is more effective than anything else. Now, it's great news for us because the cyclic sigh is the easiest form of breath work. It's not like box breathing where we need a count. It's not like breath of fire where it's intense. All it is inhaling through the nose all the way up and letting your belly expand. And when you get to the top of your breath, sipping in a bit more air, and then an audible sigh as you bring the belly back in and dropping the shoulders. So if you'd like, I could just lead us through like 3 of them right now. All right, so we can close our eyes. And for anyone listening, of course, if you're driving or anything else, don't close your eyes, but you can breathe with us. So closing down the eyes now, just feeling your feet on the floor, sitting straight up. And through your nose, inhaling through your nose, letting the belly expand and bringing that breath all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And then a big sigh, audible sigh, let it go. That's right. And again, through your nose, inhaling up as you let the belly expand, continuing to breathe all the way up. And when you get to the top of your inhale, through your nose, inhale a bit more. And then a big sigh on this side. Go ahead and drop the shoulders, bring the belly back to the spine, and just let it all go. And we'll do one more like that, inhaling through the nose and bringing that breath all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top. And this time, just holding your breath at the top of that inhale and just saying to yourself, relax. That's right. Relax. And go ahead and sigh it out slow as you can now. Let it all go. That's it. Noticing how you're feeling now, maybe giving it a name, letting your breath return to its natural state and rhythm, and just flickering the eyes back open. So that's just 3 deep inhales and exhales, the cyclic sigh. I teach and lead breath work. There's a lot of other forms. I love circular connected breathing, which is in and out through the mouth. Your listeners might know it as like Wim Hof, kind of similar to that. That can help when we're really feeling something. We have to understand when to use breath work, right? Like there's certain situations where we might utilize something like the cyclic sigh because we're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. And if all we're doing is calming our nervous system, are we actually calming it or are we compartmentalizing it? Right. So that's when I like to utilize the circular connected breathing because that takes us a little bit deeper and it turns off the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking mind. The scientific term is transient hypofrontality. It means just temporarily shutting off the thinking mind. And when we do that, all those like limiting beliefs and stuck energies and those negative emotions are coming up. And that's the shadow work. We want to get those up so that we can utilize our breath to release it. So depending on what's coming up, you might want to utilize the cyclic sigh, say before a meeting, a tough conversation or something. But at some point in your day, on a daily basis, doing something that's going to bring up those stuck energies is going to help you so that you're not contributing to compartmentalization, which is emotional baggage.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful. I feel like a lot of the times people think that mental health care, I guess, is inaccessible because they need to like pay for it or
Mm.
insurance, but like something like that in the morning or just whenever they need it is so beneficial for their mental health, and it's free and incredibly accessible. So those tools are super important to everyone listening, but everyone in general. So thank you for sharing that.
And thank you for sharing that breathing technique. It definitely, I don't know, made me feel more calm. I don't know how you felt, Abby, but
Mm,
doing that. So I appreciate you actually walking us through that.
Yeah, and a great way to apply it too is just in between tasks and projects. Like, okay, we're done with this podcast, listening to it, or us, the three of us recording it. Before I go on the next thing, let me take a few deep breaths, like the cyclic sigh, to the point of mental health resources feeling inaccessible and like stuff not being free or whatever. A lot of times we're outsourcing. We're like talk therapy, right? Like I need someone to hold space for me, but we're just venting and we're now just dumping on that other person, but we're not actually getting anywhere with that. I love to talk about the philosophy of things happening to you versus for you. You know, it's a big philosophy in personal development to say, hey, things aren't happening to you, they're actually happening for you, which is to say, like, there's this outside force that's out to get you, but poor me victim mentality when we say things are happening to me. And reframing that to things are happening for me is kind of like, okay, there's this outside force that's working for my highest and best good. And that helps a lot of people. But the real leap is shifting from that to things are happening with me. Not things are happening for me, but things are happening with me. Because when we say things are happening with me, all of a sudden now we have accountability and responsibility, and we're not relying on something outside of ourselves. And we say, hey, the onus is on me to show up for myself when I adopt a philosophy of things happening with me. And when you start to adopt that philosophy, everything with mental and emotional health starts to become so much more accessible because you understand that you have the power within you, and it's not about someone else holding space, facilitating, or learning from someone else. It's creating that accountability within oneself.
love that. I think that's also helpful. A lot of people don't find things like talk therapy very helpful. So I think that just, again, gives them another avenue to try. So thank you for sharing that too.
Yeah.
So you've done TED Talks and you've written books and you've been on podcasts. Is there a message that you want people to take away from all of that?
100%. The 90-second rule. Remember that we can move through those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings in as little as 90 seconds. And how we do that is breathe, feel, think intentionally.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then we'll end it with one last question, unless there's something we might have missed or anything else you want to add. But if someone listening is in a place of burnout or hopelessness, what's one first step you'd encourage them to take today?
Yeah, I would say commit to morning breath work, even if it's just 3 deep inhales and exhales, and you'll thank yourself for when you did. From there, you can start to commit to 3 deep inhales and exhales when you switch between tasks and projects and things like that. If you want to go deeper, I have a free online community called Breath Club. And in the Breath Club, I'm actually teaching how to rewire your mind and reset your nervous system. And I lead guided sessions in real time every single week. So there's also the Breath Club if you want to go even deeper on how to actually apply everything we're talking about here today.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And for our listeners and viewers, where can they find more information or connect with you or find these classes that you lead?
Yeah, just go to samkabert.com/club. That's Sam Kabert, KAB as in boy, ERT.com/club, samkabert.com/club. And that'll take you to the Breath Club.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to everyone for listening. We appreciate all the support, and we appreciate Sam for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stigma Stompers Podcast. We truly appreciate all your support.
If you want to see more about what we do in our community, make sure you check out our website. It's namierie.org. Make sure you also click on our t-shirt store tab so you can buy a t-shirt. We get a portion of all the proceeds. And make sure you sign up for our newsletter. It has all of our programming and event updates.
Another way you can get involved is if you feel comfortable sharing your personal story. You can email us at info@namierie.org, or you can give us a call at 814-456-1773.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye!